our Christmas Bazaar. This is happening next Saturday. It's going to start at 8 a.m. and go until 1 p.m. The nice thing about the Christmas Bazaar is that it allows the community to come in and shop and get their early Christmas stuff done. Sometimes you'll be able to find that hard to find person a unique gift, because what it is it allows the community to come in and sell their wares and be able to have 40 plus vendors here. The other nice thing about this event is that all proceeds go to our youth ministry here, our TCYM program that I am blessed to be able to work in. Along with that though is also, we have a bake sale that goes on that once again, all the proceeds from that bake sale will go towards youth ministry along with all the cafe sales. So we have a lot of food that's going on in addition to the 40 plus vendors that will be attending this program on that day. In addition to that though, there's also a basket raffle that's going to be, all proceeds will go towards the missions side of things. You can go put in for a raffle, you will try and make a donation, but then you will win whatever's in those baskets, and that's all, like I said, all proceeds will go towards the missions of the church. Next up, Thanksgiving Eve service. We have this is coming up the night before Thanksgiving, hence Thanksgiving Eve. But that will begin at 7 p.m. and last for about an hour. So come on out, you'll hear a fair share of testimonies, you'll hear a good time, but also a good message that will allow you to be able to be thankful and be able to praise God for all the things that He's blessed you with throughout this year. Next up, after that, we have our Women's Christmas Party. This will be taking place December 7th. Time will be between 12 and 2 p.m. This is a good time for our ladies of the church to be able to get together and fellowship, spread out, and be able to share a good time with each other. But the thing that's nice with this is that they are partnering with Free this year. So if you are attending, don't feel as though you have to, but if you want to bring a gift, feel free. You can do it. It'll make you feel good. On the other side of it, we also have, the ladies are going to be doing a cookie swap. So if you want to bring some cookies and you want to trade some of the other ladies with their cookies, go for it. Just bring some out, wrap the cookies, and bring out the recipe that goes along with it, so that way the other ladies that you're sharing with will know exactly what's in those cookies. So that's all I have for right now. So as you come in, and as you find your seat, prepare your hearts for worship. You'll be able to come in, you'll hear 4 songs. Bill will deliver a message for you, and that will be able to be practical in your life today, as well as in your future. But then we'll have another song, a closing prayer, and then at the end, as you are leaving, you'll be having a song that will be able to allow you to walk out with. And at the end of that, if you feel like you're keeping in touch for them, there'll be gentlemen standing in the back of the room, hand it in to them, and you may go about your Sunday. Have a great and blessed day. Thank you.
Good morning, church! I get to always tell when Kevin's here. That nice loud, good morning. All right, we're gonna shut those doors soon. That's what we're gonna do. We're not locking anybody out. Welcome to MCC. We're glad you're here. Did everybody come ready to worship this morning? That's a couple of you. All right. Well, maybe can we have some more people as we go? That'll be good. Here we go. Clap some hands, stomp some feet, sing some songs. Let's go.
Till I am a soul on fire.
know you and to make you know me. Lift your name on high. Shine like the sun, make darkness run and hide. We know we were made for so much more than ordinary lives. It's time for us to more than just survive. pray this morning. Father God, here we are once again on a Sunday morning, looking to you, Lord, looking to you for the guidance that we need, the strength that we need. Father, I just ask this morning that you help us get through the things in our life that are on our shoulders and that are a heavy weight, the things that are impossible without you. Father, just pray that you can give us strength, you can give us the will and your fire and your power to see things through, to feel you in everything, Lord, the good and the bad. Just knowing that you are by our side and you have our hand is what should be important to us. Father, don't let us forget that. Father, I pray this sermon this morning blesses us, encourages us, helps us to know you more. And I pray for generous hearts this morning as we take the offering. In Jesus' name we said, amen.
A Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring to you and your King. Good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. Some figgy pudding, oh bring us some figgy pudding, oh bring us some figgy pudding and a cup of good cheer. Good tidings we bring to you and your King. Good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. We won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some. So bring some out here. Good tidings we bring to you and your King. Good tidings for Christmas and a Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas.
All right, good morning, everybody. How are you guys doing today? Good morning. We liked it so much, we wanted to show it to you guys again. But that's coming up this weekend. It's Christmas Bazaar. It's a great thing because a lot of everything benefits the local youth ministry here at the church. So if you want to come out, even if it's not something that you usually do, come out and see some smiling faces because we have a lot of local vendors that will participate in it. And it'd be just nice to see everybody here and nice to see everybody say hi. The other thing is, you're keeping in touch for them. We ask that one person from every family hand them in at the end of the service. If this is your first time here, take that keeping in touch form and go out to the Welcoming Center and see our smiling faces that are out there at the Welcoming Center. They will give you a gift or a bag and also enter you into a donation for $10 into a local charity that is out there. It's $10 that we put into it in your name. So it's not coming out of your pocket, but it's coming out of ours and saying thank you for coming out, and we love to see you here. So we loved it, and thank you guys very much.
Every year we set new goals to change the past, try something new, do something different. But if we're honest, the new year can start to sound like a broken record. We want to lose weight, save money, get organized. We think if we can just work it harder, make it better, do it faster, we'll be stronger. But maybe we're trying to change the wrong thing, because the common denominator of every part of your life is you. Yeah, you've got 99 problems and you're a part of every one. So what if this year wasn't about what you've done, haven't done, or will do, but rather who you are? We're not gonna just work. And we're not just waiting on the world to change either. This year, we're starting with the man in the mirror.
So that's next week, and you should have had on your seat, I can see them here, bookmarks that are, I mean, you could use them as an actual bookmark, but hopefully the purpose is, and if you want an actual bookmark, just take the one on an empty seat next to you, but the purpose is to help you to go and invite your friends and your neighbors. And this is a series where we always, people want to think, when people usually think of New Year's series and resolution series and January and that kind of stuff. I'm not huge on resolutions, they don't seem to work, but if we're gonna try to begin to make transformations, we do want to use the natural flow of people's thinking at the end of the year. But the problem is, if you wait till January and February to start talking about it, we're past that point. The time to change, well, hopefully the time changes always, but in our minds, the time to change is when the year flips over. And so let's talk about transformation and change for the new year leading up to the year. What we're going to do is we're going to walk through the 10 commandments, and we're going to show you how these are not just they're not a list of do's and don'ts. They're not do this and don't do that and rules, and that. There's so much more behind them with modern day application for us today. And so we're going to walk through those and talk about how living out those 10 principles that God gave us 3,500 years ago can completely transform God. Maybe it's because you've hardened your heart. I can't tell you how many people I know that at one time or another were very tender and very sensitive to God, and yet something will happen in their life and their heart will grow cold to God. Maybe you prayed for something and said, God, I believe you're going to do this. Your mom was sick and you were praying for her to be healed, and then that didn't happen, and you go, well, then forget you, God, and your heart hardened. Or I don't know how many times I met people who were close to God at one point, and then a Christian did something that wasn't very Christ-like, or they got hurt in the church, or religious hearts towards God. And so maybe the reason is, and I want to make sure you hear me say this before we go through this. If you're a Christian, you cannot be separated from God, but if that's the case, why aren't I really feeling him right now? Well, maybe your heart that was once soft is now hardened because of something that happened in your life. Or maybe your relationship with other people is affecting your relationship with God. Did you know that? That you can't have messed up relationships with other people and have it not affect your relationship with God. Again, you can't be separated from God if you're a Christian, but there can be some, kind of the way we talk about it is kind of using like a phone term. If you're a Christian, you can't be separated from God, but you can lose bandwidth, right? And so maybe because of some of the things that you've done, some of the relationships and some of the problems you've had in relationships with people, maybe you're only connecting to God at like 2G, which is so annoying when your when your bandwidth goes down. And let me give you three. There's a lot of different ways this could happen. Let me give you three big ways that you want to check out on yourself. Maybe one of the ways one of the things is maybe you're neglecting mercy. You're neglecting mercy. What's that mean? Write down Isaiah 58. We don't have time to read it today, but that'd be a good one to study. Isaiah 58 is a situation where the people are praying and they're fasting and they're coming before God and they're wearing sackcloth and they're wearing ashes and they're like, God, how come we're not really hearing from you? We're doing all these great things. And God goes, well, yeah, that's great, but you're not really doing what I want you to do. And they go, what are you talking about? We're praying, we're fasting, we got ashes and sackcloth and all these things. How are we not doing what you want you to do? And what he says is, he says, you're not showing mercy, you're not taking care of the poor. And that's interesting, because we're doing all the things that we think we're supposed to do, but he says you're not showing mercy, you're not taking care of the poor, you're not sharing your stuff with other people, you're not taking care of the poor, and when they cry out to me, I hear them. And so maybe for some, you're neglecting mercy, and so that's causing problems in your bandwidth. Or maybe for some of you guys, it's how you treat your wife. 1 Peter 3:7 says, husbands, in the same way, be considered as you live with your wives and treat them with respect as the weaker partner, as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life. And a lot of people get offended by the weaker partner thing. It's just kind of he's making a physical kind of a observation. Like most men are, so that's all it is. It's not a big deal. And as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, look at this at the end. So nothing will hinder your prayers. If your relationship with your spouse is messed up because you're not treating her right, your relationship with God is messed up. I mean, there's no if, it's just the truth. And I know guys want to come off as super spiritual and holy, want to be heard on things of God, and then we look at how they treat their wife, and I just got to say, you got to be kidding me. This one didn't happen to me, but I had a pastor say that a guy came up to him and said, my wife and I haven't been getting along very well, and I just got a new job, a new opportunity somewhere else, and would you just pray for me that I would be able to move away from her and have a great new start? And he's like, God's not going to listen to that. I mean, it's not that. Come on, God's being like, you understand? That's my daughter. And that's the way you should think, husbands. That's actually the way you should think about it. Is that your wife is the daughter of the king, and so if you mistreat the princess and then go, and the king sees it all, and then you go to the king and say, hey, you want to help me out here? How's that going to work out for you? I mean, right? Doesn't it just make sense, right? So you treat, you got to, obviously, not just for that reason, but if you're not treating your wife right, it's not going to work out. Here's the biggest one, I think. And there's other ones, but here's the biggest one in this area. It's forgiveness. Forgiveness. Mark 11:25 says this. It says, and when you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive him, so that your Father in heaven may forgive your sins. Failing to forgive someone of something is like closing a door to God. And I know a lot of you have problems with a lot of people, and you're holding on to things for months or decades or years, and it is taking a toll on your bandwidth with God. You're a Christian, you can't be separated from God, but there can be some roadblocks put in the way, all right? So maybe it's a relationship. maybe it's because you don't actually expect to encounter God. Expectation is a huge, huge thing. I think that's especially true maybe on Sunday mornings as well. That do you come into the service on Sunday with an expectation of experiencing God? Especially during worship, and that's your expectation. A lot of times is a limiting factor or a rocket ship to what actually happens in things like that. And then maybe here's the last one, and then we'll move on to another question. Maybe it's because you're distracted. Like, do we live in a world that's really easy to get distracted? Why am I not feeling and sensing the presence of God like other people? Or well, maybe it's just because you're really, really distracted. Do you have anything in your life that might distract you? Do you have anything in your pocket that might distract you every once in a while? We all walk around with these little distraction devices in our pocket all day long, and our default mode is that every time they buzz, ring, chirp, or some of you guys got some crazy ringtones, and it's always funny, like, you'll put these ringtones on, and you ever been with somebody who they have this ringtone on they think is really cool, but they're actually embarrassed about it when it rings in public? They get real red. That's always good to make fun of them. But here's what happens. We live in a world now where if you get an update on Facebook, an update on Twitter, an update on Instagram, a new email, a voicemail, anything, your phone buzzes, and you feel like you need to instantly check that. How can we go through and expect some silence to hear from God if every 5 seconds we're completely distracted by tons of stuff? I actually had to, one of the things that I had to do, because you can imagine how much my phone goes off with different things, and I actually had to to silence so like anytime anything happens on my phone, even a phone call, my phone doesn't ring. Now, if I look at my phone, I can see it ringing or I missed call that. But unless it's my wife calling, that's the only time my phone actually rings. My mom didn't even make the cut. You know what I'm saying? Is she in the service? I don't know. Okay, she is. Don't look at her. Because I found myself all day long. All I'm doing is open my drawer, and just constant. I had to stop. So it's not that I don't see calls, and so if I'm not calling you back right away, it's just because I haven't seen it yet. That's all. But if I can't schedule my life around long periods of silence so I can hear God, and all I'm doing is hearing bzz, 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 then what good am I for anybody, right? So we got to be careful about that. If you're a Christian, you cannot be separated from God, but I can separate my focus from God on a million different things. So why am I not feeling God like I used to, or why am I not feeling God like I see other people? It's very likely it's one of those things. Maybe, so we'll go with that. Question number 2, let's do another one. Are my deceased loved ones angels watching over me, or my guardian angel, or will I become an angel when I die? I hear that a lot, especially around when I'm doing somebody's funeral service. I'll hear people say like, well, such and such passed away, but now they're like my angel and they're watching over me. And if one of your relatives dies, and they're a believer, they do go to heaven, but they don't become an angel. Okay, if your mom passed away, some people say, well, mom's watching over me. Let me just step back for a second and think about the scope of your life. Do you want your mom seeing everything that you do in your life? There's just some things right now that, that would be weird. I don't know. So thankfully that's not true. Your mom doesn't become an angel. Your uncle's not your guardian angel. You won't become an angel. As Christians, we do get new bodies in heaven, but we don't become angels. Okay, you want more on this? Read 1 Corinthians 15. Okay, I don't have time to go through all that today, but read 1 Corinthians 15. That's a good place to take a look at that. Question number 3. Let's do another one. Question number 3. Where did God come from? Where did God come from? Give you two answers on this. Number one, God is self-existent. God is self-existent. I asked you to turn to Exodus 3. Let's take a look at it now. Exodus chapter 3. God is self-existent. Here's the background in Exodus 3. Moses is up on the mountain before he leads the people out of Egypt. He's up on the mountain. He sees the burning bush. And so here's what God says in verse 10. He says, "So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Verse 12. And God said, "I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you. That is what I have sent to you. When you brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship the God on this mountain." Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?" So this is the first time that God is going to reveal his name, and in the Bible, and in this time, there's a lot to name. Names had meaning back then. Now, nowadays, I know that names don't have so much meaning. Like my last name, which is Wright, a lot of people don't know what that means, but they believe that when they find out my last name, that they can be really clever and make little jokes about it, like, "Oh, are you Bill wrong?" or "Are you Bill left?" or "Are you Bill correct?" or "Are you Bill incorrect?" or "Are you always right?" or "Did your wife marry Mr. Right?" And the answer is yes. Okay, thank you. I was a little nervous for a second. But, and every time someone comes up on a little play on words on my name, they laugh and pat themselves on the back and think it's the first time I've ever heard that, which it's not. Names don't carry the same weight as they did back then, but back then it meant a lot. And so God revealing his name to Moses is cool. And God has the coolest name. Look at verse 14. God said to Moses, "I am who I am." This is what you were to say to the Israelites. "I am has sent you." I mean, that's the coolest name that you could possibly have. And here's what it means. It means, in two words, he's saying, I always was, I didn't have a beginning, I am now, and I will never have an ending. Now, you and I had a beginning. We all had a start. There was a time when we began, and we'll all end up somewhere for eternity. So we had a start. We don't have an end. But God, who doesn't have an end, did not have a start. I like to think, I used to be a high school math teacher, so I like to think of it in math terms. And do you remember rays and lines? Do you remember rays and lines? No, some of you guys know. Okay. A ray was something that had a point and then went off in one direction forever. A line was something that went off in both directions forever. And so God is a line that goes off in both directions forever. We are rays where we had a start, but we go off in one direction for forever. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important that God is self-existent because when you pray to God, he can't be dependent on anything or anyone else. He needs to be able to say, "I've always been here and I'm always going to be here, and so don't worry about me. I'm consistent. I'm always here. I'm never going to change no matter what happens to you, no matter what think or say. God is the same. And even if your circumstances have changed, and even if your world is falling apart, God is not dependent on anything or anyone else. He is self-existent, and so you can go to him knowing he is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's the one. Let me give you another reason. Let me give you another answer to the question, where did God come from? Where did God come from? Number two. God is what's called our uncaused cause. Our uncaused cause. Well, who created God? Well, imagine this cup is our universe. I know I should have had a ball up here, but whatever, it's a cup. And this cup is 93 billion light years and expanding at the speed of light. Now imagine everything we know is in this universe, is in this cup. And what God did is he placed in this cup, or instilled in this cup, the laws of physics and chemistry and math and all the stuff that govern the universe and all the ways that we understand it. God put, through science and things, God put those laws into this cup. And so God says, I'm going to put all these laws in here, and I'm going to put man in here, and he's going to be intelligent, and man's going to begin to study my creation, and he's going to begin to find out all about the scientific laws that govern this universe. And we're learning all the time. We're about what God's put inside. And so God puts all these scientific laws into the universe, And one of these laws that he puts inside this cup is time. God created time. And so everything inside this cup is what we call limited. Now, God all the time comes in and alters things like that, and that's called miracles, but we're not talking about that in a second. Everything inside this cup is limited and is governed by these laws of physics and math and time, because that's the way God set it up. But everything outside of this cup goes by different laws. God is not a caused cause or a limited object. He's not confined inside the cup by the laws of the universe. He's not confined by time or any other law. Now, we in our ego think, well, that what's inside this cup, that's all there is. We think, well, what we know, that's all there is. We think the laws of the universe is all there is. But God made those laws. God created those laws. God set those laws into motion and put them in the cup, but God exists outside the cup. And so God is not limited by time and space and matter like we are. And so to ask the question, where did God come from, or when was God created? When did God? It doesn't work, because that's a question of time, and God created time. He's outside of it. Now, why is that important? Because when I ask the questions like who created God or where did God come from, we actually need to change our thinking and think of outside of what we know. And all we know is matter and space and time, and God created those things, but God existed before there was time. And so for him, all of time is laid out before him at once. There was no time when God was created, because God created time. God can see what's happening with Moses right now as easily as he can see what's happening with you. Why? Because he exists outside of time. He's not in the cup. He created the cup. All right? So here's a couple answers to that. Here's another one. Another question. Why can't other religions be true as also? Or how can we say there's only one way to God? Okay, that's a big thing where it's, hey, we want to can't everyone be right, and can't we all just hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and we're all going to the same place anyway, and that kind of stuff? No, okay. There should be grace, and there should be love, and there's all these kind of things, but to say that all religions are equally true, and by the way, Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship, but we're just going to use that term for right now. Okay, to say all religions are true is wrong for a whole lot of ways. I'm going to give you two, but I could give you a lot more. Let me give you two. Number one, because Jesus said so. Okay, that's one. All right, good. And I know I wouldn't get away with that outside of a Christian community, but let's start there. Jesus said so. Jesus himself, John 14:6, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. Acts 4:12 says, neither is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name under heaven given to men by which we must be saved. So why can't all religions, all teachings, all whatever be true? Because Jesus said so. That's one. For us, that's enough, but we'll go farther. Number two, why can't all religions be true? A lot of reasons. This is a big one. It's called the law of contradiction. The law of contradiction. In our multicultural, pluralistic society, people often claim that all religions they're true, and they'll say, well, why can't that holy book and this holy book all just be different parts to our experience with God? Why can't they all represent truth? It's because they all contradict each other. They all contradict each other. And if two things contradict each other, they both can be wrong, but they both can't be right. You understand? Like, they both can be wrong. I mean, all of us could be wrong, but not all of us can be right because we contradict each other. For example, if I said to you, George Washington was the first president of the United States, and then I said to you, Thomas Jefferson was the first president of the United States, can that both be true? Well, no, those two statements contradict each other. They can't both be right. And so, like in the Bible declares that Jesus died on the cross, was buried, and rose again on the third day. That's a clear teaching of Scripture over and over again. The Quran teaches that he did not. They both cannot be true and That's the central teaching of everything. They both can't be true. Either he did die on the cross, was buried, and rose again, or he didn't. One of them is true, one of them is false. Okay? Whichever one is false, throw it out and go with them. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, you should throw your Bible away. That's the central teaching of everything we have. If Jesus did not rise from the dead, don't come back ever. Don't come back. We're wasting our time here. All right? They contradict each other. Joseph Smith teaches that there are many gods. They teach polytheism, which they do. The Bible declares there's only one God. Deuteronomy 6:4 says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." The Lord is one. They both can't be true. There's either a ton of gods or there's one God. That's it. All belief systems contradict each other, including, by the way, atheism, which is a belief system. I know we want to sneak that into our schools and say, oh, well, we're not teaching religion. Yeah, it is a belief system. And so they all contradict each other. Now, we believe that truth comes from Jesus. What you need to do is you need to figure out which one is truth and go with that. We believe it's from Jesus, but if you believe it's from, you got to pursue truth, because they all can't be true. They all really, really, really contradict each other, and so you can't all be true at the same time. Here's another question. Are we living in the end times? Somebody asked me. Or a lot of people asked. Are we living in the end times? There was a movie that came out in 1972 called The Thief in the Night. Anybody ever seen Thief in the Night? Old school? Yeah, all the old people. Yeah, that was a classic one. I don't know why. This is like my third mom reference in here. I don't know why. But my mom told me that they watched that in their youth group when she was younger, and she got really scared because that night she saw the movie, went home, went to bed, and she awoke to screaming next door. And she woke up, went into her parents' room, and her parents were gone. And she's like, oh my goodness, my parents were raptured and I was left behind. Oh no. What actually happened was the neighbor passed away and kind of her parents went over with the widow. But you could imagine that would be terrifying. That would be scary. Are we living in the end times? Were's the thing. Every generation thinks they're living in the end times. Every generation thinks they're living in the end times. Are we? Maybe. Let me give you a reason why we're the most likely generation, and there's a number of things, but let me give you the big one. Okay, the big one is the restoration of Israel, the nation of Israel. That's the sign. That's the thing. If you said what's the number one biggest gotta have sign, it would be Israel had to be restored into the land, because this one is so ridiculously miraculous, and without Israel again becoming a nation, we ain't going anywhere. Isaiah 11 says, in that day, the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the, to reclaim the surviving remnant of his people from Assyria, from Lower Egypt, from Upper Egypt, from Cush, from Elam, from Babylon, from Hamath, from the islands of the Mediterranean. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four quarters of the earth. Now, in the book of Daniel was written when Israel was in exile to Babylon. They lost their nation, but they were allowed to go back and rebuild the city and the temple, and they were still there when Jesus came. But what happens is after Jesus is crucified, because they rejected Jesus, God judged them and sent the Romans in AD 70 under Titus, and they destroyed the city of Jerusalem and the temple and all that kind of stuff. And they sent the Jews out of the land. And from 70 AD, they were out of the land until 1948. 1948. How in the world does a nation with no homeland survive for 1900 years? It's impossible. And not even a big, like they're not that big. They're like 6 million people today. I mean, they're not that big. How in the world do they survive? There's never been a nation that was lost for thousands of years and then, boop, there they are again. Isaiah 66, before she goes into labor, she gives birth. Before the pains come upon her, she delivers a son. Who has ever heard of such things? Who has ever seen things like this? Can a country be born in a day? Or a nation be brought forth in a moment? Yet no sooner is Zion in labor than she gives birth to her children. Now, two key things here. First, above the objections of the Arab nations around them in May 14, 1948, the UN voted to make Israel a state. They became a nation in a single day for a second time. Second is the imagery of labor pains. And all of you that, if you've ever had a baby, you know when labor starts, you get your first contraction, but that first contraction doesn't mean the baby is coming out, unless you're really, really blessed, because that would be awesome if that happened. But no, the first contraction is a sign that more contractions are ahead, and they'll come closer and closer together, and they'll come, and then the birth, that lets you know the birth is about to happen, okay? The nation of Israel, coming back as a nation, is the sign that starts the clock. I'm not gonna be one of those crazy people and give you a date and whatever, what are the things. But you can't have the end times without Israel in the land. And so every generation that believed they were in the end times before 1948 were wrong. And they should have known that from the scriptures. Now, they're there. They're there. Okay? All right, last one for this service. To fold them, put them up nicely. Then he rolls the boulder away, finds these Roman soldiers, beats those guys up. I mean, he just knocks those guys out, and just walks away. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I mean, I don't know how that could happen. I mean, I guess that could happen somehow, but let's just pretend like that could happen. All right. So Jesus was tortured, beaten, crucified, spear through his side, couple days in a tomb, wakes up, gets his burial clothes off, beats up the Roman soldiers, walks away. Let's just pretend like that happens. Then he sees Mary in the garden. Now, do you really think, remember, he just got crucified, beaten up, he's still in that body, if this is true. He is bloody, he is mangled, and he is naked. Do you really think Mary is going to be like, oh, are you the gardener? Like, right? I don't think she makes that mistake. I don't know. Maybe. But let's just say that happened. Let's just say he's beaten, he's crucified, speared to the side, put in the tomb, burial cloth, rips the burial cloth off, rolls the boulder away, beats up the Roman soldiers. Mary thinks he's the gardener. Now where does he go? He goes to the disciples. Where are the disciples? They're in Jerusalem. What does that mean he has to do? He has to walk through the streets of Jerusalem unnoticed. Now, this is a guy that had been teaching in their synagogues for years and then had a very, very, very public execution. Do you really think that he can get through the streets of a major city without anybody seeing him? Let's say that happens. Let's say he was beaten, he was crucified, he had a spear through his side, he was thrown in the tomb, he woke up after 3 days, got out of the burial cloth, he rolled the boulder away, beats up the Roman soldiers. Mary thinks he's a gardener. He somehow gets through Jerusalem. Nobody sees the bloody naked guy. He goes to where the disciples are, to their locked room, somehow gets in without unlocking the door, and the disciples see him. Do you think that now the disciples seeing him bloody and mangled and naked look at him and go, you rose from the dead, and now I'm going to give my life. All of a sudden now I was scared in my room, and now I'm going to give my life for this, and I'm going to be tortured and beaten for the bloody naked guy. Let's just say that happened. Let's just say that happened. Do you also then think, when Jesus says, one day, too will have a body like mine, that they would have been like, sign me up? No. Here's the real question that you need to answer. Okay, here's the real question. All these other questions, good. We want to keep asking questions. God's not afraid of questions. But here's the real question you need to answer. Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Because that is the question that changes everything. If Jesus did not rise from the dead, the Bible itself says we are to be pitied among all people. But if he did, everything revolves around Jesus. Have you made a decision on that yet? Have you made a decision whether or not you believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, was buried, and rose again on the third day? You can't not make a decision. Hey, not making a decision is making a decision for no, he did not. The evidence is all on the side of him doing it. But we respond in the end by faith. And for some of you in here, you've never made that decision. You've never put your trust in the guy who hung on the cross for you. And maybe amidst all the questions of the morning, the real one that you need to answer is, did he raise from the dead? And do you actually believe it? And so we're just going to take a second here as we close out the first service, and we kind of end our first 6 questions. Like I said, next service we'll do 6 different ones. But for some of you, it's a time where you need to seriously consider whether or not you have truly about who Jesus is to me is answered. And so as honestly as I know how, I put my faith in you and turn my life over to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Are we ever going to have all our questions answered this side of eternity? No. We'll try to chip away at them. You know, we'll keep, it's good to keep asking, it's good to keep searching, it's good to keep delving in. But in the end, that really matters is all about Jesus. Would you stand with me and worship the answer to the question, who is Jesus?